So what are the forces driving impact measurement forwards in the charity sector? I think we need to look at two sides to the equation. So we need to look at the funders who are really interested in impact measurement, and also within charities themselves, the forces that are driving a focus on impact measurement. So over the last 5-10 years, funders have become increasingly interested in knowing the impact of the work that they're funding. And that's, I think, a trend that's just been a natural development of the interest in evaluation and funders supporting evaluation and asking the organisations that they fund to think about what they're achieving and to feed that back to them and report to them. So funders have been very much driving one side of that. I think what we also find is that in these times when money is very short, when resources are scarce, and when social problems are in many ways rising, that charities themselves are looking to understand better the impact of the work that they're doing, and so they're themselves looking to measure impact so that they can manage the work that they do even better, so that they can learn and improve it and get absolutely the greatest impact from the work that they're doing. So it's that combination of funders on one side and charities leaders themselves who are pushing towards the interest in impact measurement. Is impact measurement a fad? Is this a temporary phenomenon? I say absolutely not. I think while there are lots of forces that maybe will change, hopefully the economy will eventually recover to some extent, and maybe resources will be less constrained and social problems will be less pressing in some ways. So some of the forces may be temporary, but once you've started to open the box on impact measurement, I don't think you can close the lid again. So what we find very often is that charities will become addicted to the data and the analysis that they're actually able to find through impact measurement. They'll reach a point where they're understanding their work better and they're able to make changes and improvements as a result, and they won't want to go back to a world where that wasn't possible. And funders too, as they start to get analysis that helps them to compare different approaches, to compare different organisations, to really learn about the impact of the work they've funded, they won't want to go back to a world without that insight. So while some of the forces may be temporary, the changes, I believe, are permanent. Are there particular risks to be avoided in measuring impact? Well, certainly critics of impact measurement will focus on the many risks that there are around measurement. So measuring the wrong things, measuring things that aren't important, or focusing on what is measurable at the expense of what's important. Or a major risk that's often highlighted of spending money actually on impact measurement, diverting away from actually delivering services. Now I think that these are important risks and they should be discussed and they should be confronted, but actually a lot of them can be mitigated if we put frontline staff within charities at the heart of efforts to measure impact. Because if impact measurement is really meaningful for them, if it really reflects their work and their practice and real changes in beneficiaries' lives, then we'll ensure that we are measuring the right things, that we're not focusing on what's measurable but not important, and we'll ensure that impact measurement activity is a useful complement to services themselves rather than diverting resources away. So put staff at the focus of your impact measurement efforts, and that will serve you very well for avoiding risks. Are there specific reasons why charities are reluctant to measure impact? Well, we've talked about some of them already in the risks, so the risk that actually you're diverting money away from being spent better on services. But there are other reasons why charities might be hesitant. So what about if you measure your impact and you find out that actually you're not creating the kind of impact that you thought you were? There's certainly a fear there that once you look more deeply into your impact, you may find things that you don't want to know. So your intuitive understanding of the impact that you are creating through your work, it may not be matched by the findings through your evaluations. And if you reach that point, what do you do with that information? How do you respond to it? And how do you share that information outside your organisation? I think that fear factor is absolutely critical in a lot of the reluctance that we have seen, and I think it's really only addressed head on. So if you have put your frontline staff at the heart of your impact measurement efforts, if you're really doing this because you want to improve services, then actually you want to find out what's not working, because you want to be able to uncover that learning and use it to change and develop. And for sure, it's going to be difficult sometimes to communicate externally the fact that not everything that you do has worked perfectly, but it's a really important piece of being able to say, we are focused on our beneficiaries, we do want to deliver the greatest impact possible, and so these are the changes that we've made in response to what we've been learning. So I think if you're on the front foot, if you confront the possibility that everything may not be working as perfectly as you might hope, then actually you can manage that risk and that uncertainty. But it requires bravery, and it requires leadership, and it requires charities, boards and leaders to say that they're there for the beneficiary, not just for for an easy life, and they want to work as hard as they possibly can to make sure that they're doing everything they can to be as good in their activities as possible. So the question of what does the beneficiary actually gain from impact measurement, because measuring impact does require resource and so therefore takes away some resource from delivering services, that's really a question about how much better services for beneficiaries can be in the future. So if let's say that you're a homeless person who's become unemployed, who's lost their housing, and who faces various other issues, perhaps problems with alcohol and drug abuse as a result of the difficult circumstances that you found yourself in. If you're receiving services from charities, what's the thing that you want for those services? You want them to work. You want them to help you to deal with the problems that you face. You want them to help you to find stable housing and accommodation, to get back on your feet, to hopefully eventually get back into work. So you need those interventions to work. You need them to be effective. And so what you want from the organisations that are delivering those services is a thirst for improvement, for learning, in order to be able to develop better services. And that's what impact measurement promises to the beneficiary. It's better organisations, it's more successful interventions, and ultimately it's better changes to your life. And I fundamentally believe that everyone who's on the receiving end of services wants that to be the case. So moving on, the question of whether there are widely accepted standards on impact measurement. There aren't any widely accepted standards currently really in existence on impact measurement. There are lots of different approaches, lots of different frameworks for measuring impact across the world and across different sectors. I don't believe that we will ever reach the point where everyone measures impact in the same way. It's just not possible. If I'm working to improve the mental health of young people, and another charity is working to get unemployed people back into work, they're going to be measuring different things. These are completely different types of intervention. They're seeking different outcomes. You can't measure the same things. But those charities might have in place the same building blocks of their approach to impact measurement. So they might have clear goals. They might have an explicit understanding of how their work is supposed to create impact, something we call a theory of change. They might have an outcomes framework that connects that theory of change to their activities, and they might then have a set of indicators that they do measure that allows them to say how they're doing against that theory of change. They might also have a learning framework which tells them how they'll extract data from this process to improve their services. So while we can't standardise what different organisations measure, I believe we can, and indeed we should, work towards a more standard understanding of the basic building blocks of impact measurement as a process. And actually that's work that's going on here in the UK through a programme called Inspiring Impact, We've also been involved in similar discussions with the EU and across the EU, looking at the building blocks of impact measurement within the context of social investment. And I hope that we'll continue to do this across Europe and across the world, because actually the more that we have the same kind of common building blocks in place, the more that we're speaking the same language and are able to build on those foundations. And I think it's worth saying that if you look at the microfinance sector, where some of this work has been going on over the last 10 years, there is a set of universal standards which I think are quite well agreed, and they have been put in place by the organisations delivering services and are accepted by the funders, and now they're able to use that actually to start extracting data about the impact that microfinance as a whole movement, as a sector, is really making. So it's exciting stuff. Which are the most promising approaches to impact measurement in the charity sector today? Well, there are lots of different ways of thinking about measuring impact, and there are lots of really fun and interesting approaches coming through. So developmental approaches to evaluation and approaches to evaluation that think about systems change and systems theory rather than just trying to measure a really simple kind of process. There are lots of interesting approaches going on there. Technology also is bringing new approaches to thinking about measuring impact. So for example, if you can record all the conversations that a group has, and then you can use technology just to transcribe that and to analyse that and to work out what are the important things that people are talking about. Can you extract data from events without even human interaction? So there are lots of really interesting things going on. But I'd come back to the really important building blocks. So the most important approaches to measuring impact for me are those that are focused on frontline staff. And yes, they have the buy-in of leaders and boards and funders, but they're designed to work for the staff that are delivering services. And while there may be many innovations in how we evaluate, how we measure impact, that's going to be the core for me that needs to be there. Should evaluation be conducted by internal or external evaluators? Does it make a difference? Do we need certification? Well, for me actually, this very much depends on the purpose of your evaluation. But what I've been saying so far is that the frontline staff are of critical importance, and so therefore I think charities need to own evaluation and impact measurement themselves. External evaluators are very important and can be very helpful and can provide some independence. They may provide a higher level of validity perhaps, if that is your purpose. But fundamentally, for impact measurement to work, you need to own it. It needs to be built around your approaches, your beneficiaries, your staff. Finally, would I stress an approach to impact measurement that really looks at planning and project design and management rather than actually impact measurement? Well, yeah, absolutely I would. And one of the things that we've been really trying to do at NPC and through the Inspiring Impact programme is to draw people's focus away from impact meaning just measurement and much more towards impact practice, which is a much wider term. So impact practice encompasses planning and strategy. It encompasses managing an organisation and its activities, and then yes, measuring and assessing the impact of those programmes, and then reviewing and learning. But there's a whole cycle of impact practice which is much, much greater than just measurement. And while it's important and it's good that impact measurement has risen in its importance over the last 5 years, there's a danger that we focus too much on measurement without focusing enough on the earlier stages of that cycle. For me, if there's one thing to take away around impact and what you can do next to increase your readiness for impact measurement, it's be clear in your goals. Know what you're aiming to achieve in the first place. Because actually, if as a sector, the charity sector, we were all clearer about the goals that we wanted to achieve, and we shared those with others, and then we planned and measured around those clear goals, the whole sector would be tremendously advanced from where it is now, and measurement would be much more possible than it is now. So that's, I guess, my one takeaway: focus on clear goals first and come to measurement later in the story. Thanks.